Pathway Studios in Johnston proper. You are live from the path.
And you're listening to Live from the Path. We're coming from the Pathway Studios here in Johnston proper. Yeah, you are. Okay, hey man, it was a big news week. It's been a couple weeks. Maybe there's been a lot of news floating around.
There's stuff going on,
but just for the posterity of the program, and so that you remember what happened. There are lots of Supreme Court stuff coming down that had some kind of religious implications. And so there was the striking down of Roe versus Wade, mm-hmm. and the implication of a protected national abortion.
Historic.
Yes, historic. Significant, and if nothing else, it's been a bellwether of how people have evaluated justices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, basically since it came in, is that like, okay, is this codified or not? Like, can this change or can't it?
People are passionate on either side of the issue.
Yes, they are very much so. And
very few average, like, whatever, take it or leave it.
Yeah, I could, however it goes. And so I do want to talk about this, but I want to be cautious about it. And maybe what we can just do is kind of get some reaction, not necessarily on the decision itself, but like people's reaction to the decision has felt. I guess maybe I want to try to help guide, if we can, places where we need to be careful of how we're reacting to it, whether you are pro-life or pro-choice. Because I have seen a number. As a society, we don't progress thoughtfully, and frankly, I would even caution that the gospel can find some barriers where we are not cognizant of the world that we're in, the people that are reacting to news and situations around us, and where there's a marriage in here around if we feel like the gospel explodes based upon a government, something that rules comes down from a court or for a political policy. It's a risk. I think it's a risk. And so I just want to talk through a few different things that as I was watching people react, there's been things that made my heart hurt. Mm-hmm. And it may not be what you presume, the types of things that are making my heart hurt around this. And so anyway, I just want to talk through some of that stuff. And I want to briefly touch on the other thing that came down was there was a coach who was after the football games was going out to like the 50-yard line and praying. And, kids would come out. There's kids that would follow him out there and they would pray too. And he got fired, and they basically ran the case up to the Supreme Court of, can you fire, is this the religious discrimination? Can you fire this guy because he's conducting, public prayer? And he was vindicated there as well. They said, look, he should not have been fired for that reason. It's a private faith that he just happens to be expressing. He's not doing it in the context of being a coach or whatever. And I think maybe there's some themes on where we should be happy, but also cautious. And the line probably splits around what are you protecting as a nation, and then what are we mindful of as a kingdom? And maybe that's where some of the distinctions lie. And so we'll try to get to some of that.
Should we be wearing like black robes on this episode?
I think so. I think probably so. We're qualified.
I feel a little prepared.
No, Dan. We're totally qualified for this. Spending many late hours giving advice to people based upon whatever just popped into your mind has set us up for times such as these.
Yes.
To be able to help straighten out the world's problems. Major things that people just need help with. So we're going to do that. Nathaniel, did you locate anything else newsworthy?
No. It was all Roe v. Wade stuff.
Okay, as it would be. Okay. All right. And then we'll get
the talk of the town.
It is. It's going around. We'll get some advice.
The real scuttlebutt.
Also on Dear Life from the Path. That's the hit. Okay. So let's talk about then, as we think about Roe versus Wade, here's some of the things that I saw that I think I want to be cautious about, or that I think we need to consider. You guys can jump in where you see fit, or add on, or argue. I think the start one from my perspective is what I had in my mind is contrasting our reaction to this versus our reaction to proposed stricter gun laws. And the reason that comparison came to mind was when it comes to the stricter gun laws, we're like, hey man, what are you going to do? You're going to make it harder for good guys to have weapons of defense, and additional laws won't make a difference because people who are going to commit criminal acts ignore laws. Mm-hmm. Okay? And so then I look at some of the reactions I'm seeing in Christian circles, and like you would assume that the Lord himself descended upon the court in this reaction. And like the gut thing, which is, hey, Christians believe there is an innocent life, and that innocent life is not being protected. And there's a court ruling. It's not even a law. I think we got to be clear about that. Like even original Roe versus Wade, like we're not pointing back to the Everyone Can Do Abortion Act. Mm-hmm. We're pointing back to a court ruling that said, based upon the interpretation of the Constitution, we believe that covers this. That was the ruling. Okay, so it was always a judicial ruling. It wasn't somewhere, and this is the gap, by the way, like where we fight over justices and we fight over interpretations. Things get a lot cleaner if we just pass laws. Right, but no one has done that. And so you left it up to the court. I saw a lot of complaints about, hey, this has happened by judicial fiat. Well, I mean, that's how the first thing happened.
Yeah, that's how it started. Yeah.
So, let's at least be let's be honest. There's an ambiguity in the situation that the Constitution is intending to address. And Christians, you should be familiar with this. The Bible, we do this with Scripture. We say, we've got a text handed down to us, and it doesn't cover how I'm supposed to treat people in the grocery line when they run out of food stamps. No, but there's implications based upon what we've learned, and we can apply it. But we do this all the time with Scripture. And so we're in that same position with the Constitution. And so the original Roe versus Wade did that. It said, well, based upon what we read in the Constitution, we believe it extends to this. Now, there's plenty of legal scholars who said, hey, we think that was poorly found. We actually think that was a stretch of the Constitution. And this goes back to like core beliefs is how living of a document is the Constitution. Mm-hmm. Okay?
Yeah.
But we should be super duper clear that if any politician or group of or political party had the stones to do it, they could have resolved this a lot easier. They punted. Okay, both Democrats and Republicans have punted on this particular measure and left it up to the courts when all you had to do was pass a law and get a president to sign it to say very clearly this thing is legal, this thing is not legal. And then the courts would not have the ambiguity that they have. We left it open because we didn't have the spine for it. Mm-hmm. So the clarity then I think for one is be careful on – I think this is actually a win, even if – you're not going to hear it this way, but even if you're pro-choice this is the nation functioning like it's supposed to. It's the judiciary functioning like it's supposed to. You're going to have different people. It's not a political issue. It's a how do we interpret the Constitution issue. Now they do tend to split along relatively close party lines, just generally speaking, of whether you're an originalist or whether you think it's more living, breathing type of thing. But it's not so much a political thing. The reason you're making it a political thing is because you don't know how else to point the finger when it's a legislative problem. Like I said, if we had stated this clear out. So be careful about the notion of the radicalization of the judiciary. And I would have given the same. In fact, I think we did the same caution even in kind of the Obama era, even the Clinton era. Where we were like, well, the justices have gone nuts. Well, will you give justices room or the have to interpret? Like nothing gets to their desk that is clear. That's how it got to them. Mm-hmm, is right. Because if the law was clear, it wouldn't have made it through all these courts. There wouldn't have been grounds to push it back up there. And so, like our judiciary is in a bit of a rough spot. Is that like their job is to have to interpret where someone who wrote laws wasn't clear. And so, just be cautious about how excited we get about how corrupt the judiciary is, whether it's a conservative leaning or whether it's liberal leaning. Every single court is set up to have to handle something where someone didn't state something very clearly. Mm-hmm. So, but I think the risk on the Christian side is that, and this goes back to the gun example, is that the situations of which people were pursuing abortions didn't change just because the law changed. And for one, like this didn't make abortion illegal. It just pushed it back to the states, right? Like this didn't say we as a country all agree that this is wrong. It didn't do any of that. Mm-hmm. It just said as we're now pockets of you can make a decision, and most certainly there's going to be states who are going to say, yeah, totally. In fact, we're going to find a way to make sure it's free, make sure it's paid for by the government, and we're going to encourage, abortion tourism. Like this is totally going to happen. And so,
yep.
And there's some states who are otherwise who've got trigger laws who are going to automatically go through and make abortion illegal. And so, but our division didn't change. It's just now expressing itself at the state level. And so, I think we should be very cautious about, hey, this law will save millions of babies. I hope, or this ruling will. Excuse me. I hope, but I don't know that that's actually our situation. I'm not sure. This pushes the argument to a more local level. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you're going to find that suddenly, well, because it's not forced upon us by the federal government, that you're going to find states where this was rampant aren't going to continue doing that.
Well, and the thing is, it does not change the purpose of the church in any way. What we were doing 3 weeks ago is the same as what we're going to do 3 weeks from today.
That's right.
It's sometimes we put so much emphasis and weight on a court decision or a law or whatever government is, governmental leaders in charge at the moment. And you look through church history, whether, Nero is in charge or Constantine or, whoever, Hitler, or Bush, whoever is in the heading whatever country, the Christians there that are part of the church, they have the same mission.
That's right.
Nothing's different. We're to make disciples. We're to be changing hearts. We're introducing people to the saving power of Jesus Christ and his transformation process that takes place in our lives. And so regardless of what the law says, if you can go out and poke people in the eye, and Jesus says don't poke people in the eye, then it doesn't matter what the law says. People who follow Jesus don't poke people in the eye.
That's right.
So our goal is to bring people to Jesus, and everything else falls in place.
Yes.
And that's where I think it gets. I kind of have the same reaction that you've had a little bit. That I've looked at reactions and I thought, now full disclosure, I am thrilled that Roe versus Wade went down. Okay, I want to save every baby possible, right? But I also was not the guy jumping up and down, shooting off fireworks, slamming people against lockers, saying you're a loser,
right?
Because again, nothing's changed for me.
Right.
I'm still going to reach into the life of many young mothers as possible and say, hey, would you like to follow Jesus? Here's how you do that. Number one, keep that baby, or adopt it out, or at least don't kill it. Jesus kind of frowns against killing things, people, especially innocent ones. So the reaction has been strong and almost in your face. And I played. I'm not like a great athlete, but I played sports in high school, right? And yeah. So I watch sports and stuff, and I get annoyed at like a team that over celebrates like a touchdown or something, because I think, well, if you're a winning team, you expect to score, right?
Yeah.
You expect to win,
yeah.
And I feel like Christians don't know how to win. They had a big win, so they're embarrassing themselves and rolling around and throwing things in the air. And every social media post in every 5 minutes is like, "Oh yeah, you lost, right? Hey, we won. God now rules because he didn't before."
Yeah,
and I think it's just we're just looking kind of silly, even though on the inside I might be thinking all those things.
Yeah,
I don't disagree with them. I'm just not going to go to my neighbor and punch him in the face and say, you're a loser and I'm a winner because the court said so. I just don't think that's appropriate.
Well, and because I think one of the things that we miss here, and this is going to put me in an odd spot, but I think where we should be on board, like we are You should be pro women. You should be pro women, not be putting in terrible situations.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like there are as much as they are overstated, right? When you're talking about risks to the life of the mother or rape or incest, right? Like the numbers are super duper small, like whatever 1% or less, 2% or less, something like that. However, that doesn't account for how many situations of which someone has gotten pregnant, thought they were in a committed relationship, and some jackanapes just walks away, and like without any physical consequences to the man. Like if we can't understand that, if we can't sympathize with this situation that we're talking about, which like you've got some ideologues in here who like we're just chucking fire around on both the liberal and the like Republican side, but like in the middle, like there's real people trying to sort out, well, what does it mean for me to have maybe even a mistake of a relationship or one night with a guy who just turned out to be a total doofus, and he's not going to help me, and I got 7 more months to be reminded of what happened, and to take half of his DNA with me to carry this baby and then have the burden of raising it. Like, that's a difficult human problem. It doesn't change for me how we understand like protecting life, but like, what does it feel like for women who are in that situation to have someone who proclaims the love of Jesus to be like lighting fires here, to be pointing fingers and having a victory? Does her life feel like a victory? It doesn't. There's a greater context to her life, and like I think we have to be careful in the conversation. Like, abortion's the worst. It's just the worst conversation because like everyone is talking past each other just for the opportunity to have their voice bounce off the back of the room and hear their own selves and be real happy about it. Like, if our conversation is pitting women against babies, we've failed. This is a failure of a conversation on the Christian side. Now, we shouldn't even be pushed into it. We do not accept the terms that it's woman versus child. Now, I have seen it. I've been surprised actually after this on the number of people that I know who have come out and just like very firmly and clearly said, "Look, I'm not pro-choice. I am pro-abortion. A woman should not be forced to carry a child, like even up to the day before it's born." You should just be, because she shouldn't be able to have to force to carry something 1 minute more because it's her body. Now here's the deal: when does life begin? When is the child viable? Like there's grays in here. Some places in Christianity, like this is super simple. But like what it is to live in that, especially if you're asking for people who aren't Christians, who don't agree with your definition of when does life begin, like they still have to react to like how these laws work, what morality you're imposing by the laws themselves. And so I just like nothing about striking down that interpretation of the Constitution changes the situation for the young lady who's in that situation. You know what I'm saying? And doesn't change the perilous nature of a thought of this child is putting a risk to the health of the mother. And I know, Dan, you've gone through this. Your family has gone through this, and I think your faith allows, in some ways, for the knowledge of what to do to be simpler, but not the consequences aren't gone. Right? They're super heavy.
Right.
Of what that means.
Right. Yeah, we were in a situation a number of years ago where we thought we had to choose between the life of the unborn child and my wife, and we both came to the conclusion, well, the baby wins. We're going to protect that innocent life. It's not its fault, whatever the situation was. Not everybody would go that direction.
Sure.
But that's how much we definitely are on the side of life and believe that life begins at conception. My wife was willing to go ahead and sacrifice her life for her child, because she would do that if the child was 5 and was running in front of a car.
Yep.
Why wouldn't I not do it when I'm sitting here in a hospital bed? Of course. I had a good life. Good luck with our child.
Right.
But that's because we come from a foundation of faith, and
Right.
those are honest convictions. They're not like it's not a response to, oh no, I'm pregnant. It's not I don't know how I'm going to afford this. I mean, none of that mattered to us. None of that was part of our process. It was okay. There's an eternal perspective here. There is a God who created us. We're going to spend eternity. There's an eternity coming up. We want to follow how Jesus, we believe, would want us to follow. And that's where that's what we're supposed to be doing with the population.
Yeah.
With the people around us as you go make disciples. And that's why I say, I don't, it's not going to sound right. I don't care what the law is. It doesn't change.
That's right.
Our mission.
No, I think that's right.
We're teaching Jesus. We're teaching life. We're teaching what the Scripture says. We're teaching there's an eternal soul that we have and our children have, and there's consequences to our actions, and that's way bigger than can I afford or am I comfortable with the fact that I don't like the father of this child, or how this child was conceived. Those are bigger issues than that. But you don't just push that on someone 3 months into their pregnancy, and they're processing. That's stuff we have to teach them young, or anyway.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Someone still has to live that.
Yeah,
It's saying like it's one thing. Your principles should be clear on paper, and we should understand them. But it doesn't mean they're not difficult and
right
to walk through, to live through, and it creates an unfair burden upon the lady, because the evidence of whatever is going on is very clear on her life, and like it's a failure of men, it's a failure of a responsibility of men, it's a failure of communities holding men to account for things like this, and I'm not talking about raping. I'm just talking about families. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about I'm up for shame here. Like a guy who behaves in this way and treats women in such a way that this becomes a burden upon her. Like we've fought for our individuality and the freedom to harm ourselves and to harm each other. And unfortunately, the consequences in this particular area fall heaviest on a mom, and on young ladies. And so here's what I know is that I know, and Dan, I'm sure I know tons and tons of pastors. I can't think of a church where someone could show up and they would not find help in need.
Right.
I just this is happening. It is happening in churches, and I saw a lot of push on social media, like, hey, why aren't fine Christians? Why don't you adopt? We're adopting the hell out of the world. We are, we're kicking it. By far, by the way, Christians by far do most of the adopting. We do most of the funding of the charities that support kids that are waiting adoption. They do most of the foster care. It's still generally true that way. And so hey, could we be doing more? Yes. Are the people who take on the name of Jesus who don't reflect that in any decisions that they make, and this largely feels like a political victory to them? Yes, and I'm embarrassed of that. That's shameful. Mm-hmm. And so you got us on. Well, you got somebody. It's not a. The point though is that I don't get in a piss and mess with the people of Jesus on how we care for the world. We got room to grow, but we're still killing it by far. Yeah. And so I want to be cautious of that, but it is also the time of which then the witness of such is revealed. It makes me think about, and this is just I'm teaching in this recently in 1 Peter. There's a section that causes a lot of trouble among people, and it's where he writes in chapter 2 and 3, and he's talking about if you are a household slave, this is how you should conduct yourself. If you're a wife, this is how you should conduct yourself. If you should submit to the government. Nobody likes this. Nobody likes any of these parts, because it's essentially what Peter is doing. He's advocating for. Look, we all know that imbalances of power should change. We know people shouldn't subjugate each other like this. We know that people should be treated with respect and with honor and be treated fairly. He doesn't advocate that you blow up the structure of which the society is working, even if that's what biblically they would like to, because it wouldn't happen, right? Mm-hmm. Peter could go, hey, you know what? As a household slave, declare yourself free and fight back. But I mean, it wouldn't. He knew that it wouldn't change, right. And so the question is how do you live within the constraints of an evil society? And the advocation to the slave, and this is the same thing Paul basically did in Philemon, and the advocation he gives to the wife as well of an unbelieving husband is, even within those constraints, use your example so that they may meet Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at how Paul talks in Philemon, he writes to Philemon and says, "Look, I want you to accept this man back into your household, and then you become brothers." The relationship itself changes. And so by the Christian example within constraint, the opportunity to show that example, and for Christians to bear up underneath it, is the opportunity to be a witness when people are looking. Because in the example that Peter's giving with the wife, like to show honor to a husband who does not follow Jesus and who will not listen to you talk. Because that was one of the things that, like, you can talk him all you want to, but he's not going to be listening. But through your example, he will come to know what it means to see Yahweh enter your life and the influence of Jesus Christ on how you interact with him. And then it becomes a place that could change. And so the point I'm coming to here is that, like, there's a very eye of Sauron here on the Christians, because they're like, okay, well, what are you going to do with these babies? How are we going to help with the mothers?
Yeah.
You know, these are things Christians are doing. But what I'm saying is that, like, fine, let them look, and let them bless their socks off.
Yeah.
Let them be surprised at the accusation they made against the Christians. Like, they're going to totally feel ashamed of, because you know what? Everything that they say we're not doing, we're doing.
They're doing it.
That's right.
I just, this past Sunday was in Matthew 16, where Jesus and his disciples are at Caesarea Philippi, and this is the big place where Jesus says, "Who do people say I am?" And then Peter says, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." And he's on this rock, I'm going to build my church, right?
Yep.
Well, that location happens to be a place where there are multiple fertility god temples. There's a temple to Pan. You can find it today, the actual place where they were, right?
Yep.
There's a cave there called the Gates of Hades, where they believe Pan went for the winters, and he'd come out. Well, the worship of Pan involved all kinds of sexually deviant behavior, including sex with goats. I mean, it was something that obviously. You can go back to Leviticus, and God says, "Yeah, don't do that." Right? I mean, it's completely against his character.
Right.
So Jesus says, "On this rock, I'm going to build my church." He uses the word talking like a cliff of rocks. It's a big rock. He calls Peter is like a small rock, Petrus and Petros. Anyway, don't want to get too deep there. Point is, he's pointing at this place where all these temples are, and where all this worship's taking place, where all these idols are located. You can still see where they were carved into the edge of the mountain there. He says, "I'm going to build my kingdom on that right there." That he did not say, we're going to take down all of this sexually deviant behavior with Roman law. You know, he didn't say, we're going to protest and we're going to scream and we're going to get on social media, we're going to shut these people down and we're going to tax them and we're going to do everything we can to get these temples run out of business. He said, my kingdom's going to come in. It's going to replace all of that. That as people start following Jesus, you'll just stop having sex with goats, right? And people start following Jesus, and they're going to stop having sex with the temple prostitutes and the priests and just all the stuff that was going on there. His kingdom is a transformation thing that happens in us as the Spirit takes over our lives and controls us. It changes us, and we just stop living that way. That's kind of what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just don't get. I try not to get too excited one way or the other on laws. I have grieved Roe versus Wade over the years. I have prayed for it to end. I'm thrilled that it ended, but it's still, like I said, it does not change a bit what we're to do. We're to establish the kingdom of God here on earth in the hearts of people, make disciples, and that changes everything, whatever the law is. Yeah. And that's got to be our focus. And we're celebrating the wrong things. I just got a video from some friends who we're going to Africa here in 3 weeks, and they're there right now doing a revival in just a few miles from where we're going, and they sent this video back of just these tons of baptisms happening. There's this big revival going on right now. That's the kind of stuff we ought to be celebrating.
Yeah.
People are coming to Christ. They're changing their lives. They're deciding to become followers of Him. that's going to change things there in that community. That community will be transformed because the kingdom of God is moving in, and it'll replace some of the behaviors that they're doing. It's a struggle, and we all struggle with sin. I'm not saying perfection happens, but that's what happens. That's what the church does. I wish we could focus more on that than all the political action committees and all the stuff that takes place. And some of it's legitimate, but still, our focus has got to be spreading the word of Jesus, the gospel of Christ, making disciples of people, building His kingdom here on earth, and then we're giving glory to God.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Like any what feels like political or societal victory that isn't changing hearts and minds for Jesus is not only shallow, but it's transient. Mm-hmm. Like how long has the pro-choice lobby been celebrating the fact that Roe was codified, and they thought, and it probably wasn't going to go anywhere. Mm-hmm. Like humans are fickle, and to be honest, to the point I made at the start of the show, like, give it 10 years, they could totally get some like legislation where this is not even a question anymore. Like there's no hope of something being overturned. It's law. Yeah, it's not a judicial problem because someone came in clear.
Pendulum swings.
That's right. And that's not our God. Our God is not a swinging pendulum. Our work is the service of the world for the glory of the kingdom, for the transformation of the hearts. And so like we just. Now here's the boundary though. Is I saw I heard another pastor talking, and he was saying, "Hey, I think this is not going to work. We shouldn't be celebrating this at all. Like it doesn't work for Christians. We're creating a theocracy by taking our morals and pressing them upon somebody else." Now here's the thing: all laws represent a set of morals,
right?
And so like it is unfair to tag. As if this is a Christian theocracy problem, simply because there's an implicit morality in every set of laws. The question is, whose morality is it? Mm-hmm. Like whose then do I trust? Like the fact that hey, this particular law happens to agree with God's position on the matter doesn't make it a theocracy. Like no one was up in arms when we continue to enforce murder in general is bad.
Right.
No one and like that's a clear 10 commandment. We don't go, oh look, a Christian theocracy, thou shalt not murder. Look at you trying to press it upon everybody else. And so like this is where things get super difficult. It's easier, frankly, if you're a Christian, because we go, okay, I get God's character, I get how He sees the world. Here's how we should bind ourselves. Here's how our behavior should show that. Outside of that, you're in a very tricky position because now, like, whose morality do the laws of our society reflect? Mm-hmm. Is it what the majority feel are okay? Because, like, I mean, again, you can totally look back at societies through time and be pretty embarrassed of those societies and even ourselves on the things as a society where we said, you know what, yeah, that's 2/3 of a person.
Yeah,
that was a founding document problem.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And so, like, and the majority would have gone with it, and we were like, well, yeah, but like, so there's a fallibility in human morality, but like, I think we just got to be careful. I was a little bit. I was frustrated with the laziness of this, like, because I think in trying to protect the fact that knowing that there are going to be quite a few people who feel like they're on the other side of that decision, who they feel like there is a they're being ignored, that their situations are being ignored, that they as people are I don't know, being represented without value because this option is off the table. Again, I think it pits the wrong things against each other, but like whatever, like that's how they are, that's how they feel. And so in order to try to say, hey, like not every Christian is like jumping up and down here, I think the guy overcommitted because like it just isn't you're not being thoughtful. Like everything represents some level of morality, and frankly, trying to sort out the morality among groups of humans is super hard, is super duper hard. Because, I mean, there's some wacky people out there. A lot of them are currently in the prisons. A lot of them are fleeing the police. A lot of them live in your neighborhood. Like, you've met some people and you're like, this is the guy. He gets to vote in the morality bucket.
Right. I mean, like you and I would say, well, you can't steal. But someone else would say, but if they're hungry.
Right.
Then you can.
Right.
That's not stealing. That's just providing.
Hey,
for
you
yourself.
You can't vandalize. Well, they're angry.
Yeah, so like, let them express themselves.
And so, right, exactly. Or like, hey, you can't harm people. Well, it's my kid, and I get to do what I want. Like we look at these things and we're like, it can't be this way. But I think we got to be careful. This is not. I saw some implication that like that the Christians have been like that our society is becoming a Christian theocracy. I'm like, are you? There's no way. There's no way.
No.
That is no. Now here's the deal. It might be a. What's the word I'm looking for? It might be a Christian coalition type of view. And maybe we're making progress on some of those things. But like, this doesn't look like the kingdom of Jesus. And any Christian who looks out at our nation and goes, "Oh yeah, this is a mirror of the kingdom of Jesus," like we're too caught up in our own structure. And we got to be mindful of that. Now, here's the thing. I think protecting the notion of these freedoms is what allows. I think this is all good, and I think we've talked about this before on your participation in the political process is important because, like, you do get to contribute your voice to our collective morality. That you're sourcing it from Yahweh is irrelevant because someone else is sourcing it from what they thought of that day, or two tokes and a vote, like whatever. I think we got to be careful. There's all kinds of things where we can overreact to. It seems so weird. This is such a big thing that people are talking about to say, well, don't overreact, but don't overreact. Like, keep the main thing the main thing. And I think, if this causes the world or specifically America to shine the light on churches and say, all right, well, if you say it can work where people can take care of mothers and children, then do it. And we should go, hey man, we're in twice. We're in 4 times, whatever. Let us do it. And so maybe encouragement to churches, like I said, a lot of churches. It's not like I can't think of a guy that I've ever met as a pastor who the church wouldn't find some way to help or direct them to good help. But
right.
This might be the time to be intentional about money that's going out the door intentionally for these types of things. Are you specific about, hey, 10% of the money that we're taking in is going out to this kind of thing? I think that is one of the things that's going to become difficult in the years to come, is that as if more things like this happen, religious freedom type of stuff comes by, it's going to continue to draw attention and focus on the church. And I think the last time I saw, I don't know if the numbers are right anymore, but like 80 to 90% of the money that comes into churches stays inside the walls, whether it goes to the pastor's salary or whether it goes to like heating and cooling the operation or whatever. I think that is going to be harder to sustain the narrative if that continues to bear out. And so I think it's just it's not a caution, it's an encouragement. Like we want our money to be going to our resources to go to these types of things, our time going to these types of things. It might just be a good time for a health check and go, hey, if someone were to come in and look, what would they say our priorities were? And does our giving reflect that? Does our time and commitments reflect that? And it's a prayer option. Don't allow outside forces to force you to do things that aren't right for either your congregation or you. But like, I'm just saying, it's kind of a good time to say, look, if my mom's going to look in my bedroom and see whether it's clean, I might take a look around and say, is this what I want to present back? Mm-hmm. Kind of yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Nathaniel? You just kind of hanging tight over there. What are your thoughts?
I'm deeply in agreement with you and Dan. Deeply. I also, until Sunday when you mentioned it, I don't really watch the news, and I didn't even know it was going on.
You had no idea.
So after you said it on Sunday, I popped on the Facebook. I was like, I'm sure I'll find something about this out. And boy, howdy did I.
Oh man,
somebody might be saying something.
Yeah, somebody might have something to think about this, and I was like, it was almost overwhelming with the amount that there was. About it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I maybe that's a miss on my part, but I didn't know it all.
I mean, I feel like you should probably know.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't have to overinvest in the reaction like we've been discussing, but I mean, maybe keep up with the times just a hair.
Yeah. Okay. I'll pick up a paper every now and again.
Okay.
Get the newspaper.
75 cents.
Pull up a chair to the radio.
Hey, for real though, I used to know all sorts of news because I had a 30-minute commute and I would listen to NPR.
Right.
Whether that's good news or bad news or indifferent, I at least knew things.
Right.
No more.
No more. No, there's a health to that, and then there's a dishealth to it. I'm of two minds. You can just catch me on a Tuesday. We'll see how I feel about it. Sometimes I'm like, let's bail and let's not take anything else in. Let's corrupt my mind. And then you go like, but what does the corruption look like so I can pick it out?
I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to text you every Wednesday. I'm going to say, hey, Ben, what's the news?
Okay, that's an idea. Here's the thing.
You overconsume news.
I do.
I'll get the highlights.
Luckily, I don't think anybody I work with actually listens to the program, but I'm on quite a few boring meetings where people are jibber-jabbing around for their own glory. And so I just pick up, I'm just picking up news, reading around, seeing what's going on in the world. Okay, so there was another major, I almost hesitate to do this, but if you listen to everything we just said and have a reaction to what we actually said, not I think it's great, or I think this is terrible. But within the context of the, I want to say, nuances and grays and principles that we just discussed, and you feel like you want to add to that conversation, I am interested. I would love to hear it. You can give a call to the Life from the Path Bob Einsler complaint line. That's 515-517-0085. Call or text. We would love to hear from you. I'd be particularly interested in the thought of now then how shall we live? So and I think Dan's point is basically the same as you did before, but maybe the question is with a heightened view on it. Have you done an inventory either personally or within your church or within your small group of folks or your family or whatever, and said, I put 20 posts on social media and I gave $8, or I refused a conversation, or I know I haven't met a single mother in 10 years. Okay, well maybe we got to change where we're at and what we're doing. If we're not running into people, that's one of the biggest cautions is that your principles. And even if I think they're good and godly, just recognize that they may hit you differently because you're not in that position. It doesn't mean that they're not right. It just means that there's a context to people's lives of which they have to digest this. And it doesn't help, even if that's a bad example. If someone was hungry and you thought, well, they could probably eat a lion, and you just threw it over the wall and said, good luck. It's right. You should be able to eat this lion. You may have thought you've been helpful, but they might need some help here in, I don't know, eating the lion or knowing how to prepare it or whatever. I knew this was a bad example. I couldn't come up with a better one. I had to go with it. But if I try to make a point, especially with really hot button things, to make sure I'm close enough to a situation or know people in that situation, hopefully people who would disagree with me who are in that situation, so that I know what context I'm speaking into. Because even if your words are true, it does matter how people are going to receive them, and what you intend may not be received the way you expect, simply because you didn't know the context you were speaking into. And so, anyway, it's just a caution. But I'd be interested to see whether anything about this situation caused you to rethink things that you're doing, things that you're praying on, situations that you're exposing you and your family to or your church to. I'm particularly interested in that. But if you got any thoughts, let us know. Call or text the Bob Eisenhower Live in the Back of Playland, 515-517-0085. There was another big Supreme Court case, at least from a religious liberty front. Let me just read the quick summary. The United States Supreme Court has ruled that a Washington school district was wrong to punish a high school football coach for praying on the field after games. In a decision released Monday morning, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that the Bremerton School District discriminated against Coach Joe Kennedy. Justice Neil Gorsuch delivered the court's opinion. Doesn't matter. Kennedy prayed during a period when school employees were free to speak with a friend, call for a reservation at a restaurant, check email, or attend to other personal matters. He offered his prayers quietly while students were otherwise occupied. Still, the Bremerton School District disciplined him anyway. Both the free exercise and free speech clauses of the First Amendment protect expressions like Mr. Kennedy's. The Constitution and the best of our traditions counsel mutual respect and tolerance, not censorship and suppression for religious and non-religious views alike. So in general, the contention here was, and I think this again is sticky, and I think we got to recognize that if it's at the court, it's because we've not passed laws that provide clarity. The concern on the other side, we're like, well, okay, people should be able to pray, But he said he was the coach, so he's an authority figure. Some of the students went out there, and so there was a concern on some of the other students who weren't going out there who said, does this put me in the potential for like a discriminated against position? Because if I don't go out and pray with him like everyone else is going out and praying with him, I feel forced to. And so that's essentially what the case was about. I think what was interesting is that this seems like a legal question that is religious irrelevant. Like in general, it'd be like if, let's say I worked in an office building and my boss really loved to he loves nachos. Nacho Wednesday, he says. And he invites all the people to come out to Nacho Wednesday who are on our team. If like there's 10 people and 8 of them go, me and the other dude are going to be like, I don't care for nachos at all, to be honest with you. And I'm busy Wednesdays, but like my whole team's there. I feel like they're getting in good with the boss, and I feel compelled to go. Mm-hmm. Like, I get it. Like, it feels like the same type of situation. We're saying, when someone has some sort of level of authority or power or influence over you, how much should you feel compelled to do the things that they're doing because it keeps you in their good graces? Now, I don't think that part's constitutionally protected. You don't have to go if you don't want to. And frankly, like if my boss is discriminating against people because they don't show up to Nacho Wednesdays, or the coach is saying, look, I'm going to treat you differently because you don't pray at the 50-yard line with me, then he's a bad coach and you should fire him. I'm fine with that. That's not firing him for his religious beliefs. That's firing him because he is using his religious beliefs to otherwise not make thoughtful decisions around the thing you actually hired him to do. And so I don't care if they fired him for that reason, but they didn't fire him for that reason. They fired him because they felt like it put some sort of pressure on these kids because he then might do that. And I'm not sure that should be legally protected. And frankly, ignore the fact whether you have a problem of his religious beliefs or not. I don't know that most people actually think that either. That like someone should be forced to basically not be themselves or allow anything that they believe that someone might cause offense or difference of opinion on, lest someone feel pressured to go along with it because you're in a position of authority. Like my boss has to give up nachos. Lest at Nacho Wednesday. He loves Nacho Wednesday. It's his favorite. But he has to give it up because 2 guys thought that he might, not treat them very well if they didn't show up. This seems well ruled to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. It was interesting because looking at both of these cases, I thought, I read them. Like, I get the law. I understand the law's perspective. The moral questions weren't answered here. The law questions were answered here. Mm-hmm. The moral questions show up in better or more clearly written laws.
Yeah, that was a hard one for me because, like, if I were one of the players, I would just be like, I wouldn't care I wouldn't feel pressured.
Right.
I'm just not my personality. I never go with the crowd necessarily. I mean, if I want to do what the crowd's doing, I go with the crowd, but I don't like that's not the reason I go with the crowd. It's like, I got to be like everybody. Right. So I've never quite understood that thinking. So yeah, I've kind of struggled with the whole conversation about it because I don't know how to relate to. My wife is a pleaser, so she would probably be one of the first ones. I better go over and pray, and I'm like, well, why? Because the coach is watching. It's like, well, then you should pray somewhere else because that's not why you pray,
right?
But so I kind of get it because but I don't at the same time. Yeah, I just think we'll just stop it. Just be your own self. Do your own thing, and don't worry about it. If I was the coach, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to go over here and pray. Lost my job. Okay. I'm still going to pray. I mean, yeah, you're not going to stop me from praying. Right. So I understand where he was coming from too.
Yeah. It's such an odd thing because like this came up, this has come up in societally around this notion of people feeling like they have to do or say or behave in a certain way around people who have positions of authority over them. Mm-hmm. We talked a lot about it with like through some of the Me Too stuff, but like in general, the question is that like, people feel like they have to go along because someone has some level of power or authority. And like it gives, I can't talk to every circumstance. I don't know, I'm a white dude. I don't know what it's like to be all kinds of other situations. But like like I think we got to be real cautious as a society that we don't start drawing the same thing that we would have said that the Pharisees failed at, right? Like drawing lines in front of lines in front of lines, lest something that could happen but isn't happening may never.
Right.
Because we thought this might be some sort of problem. And so, I think we just have to be cautious about that kind of thing. I think it's right. Like I think we should always question folks in authority and like you're an American. We're bred for this. Is to look at people who are supposed to have some level of authority over us and go, I don't know. I don't think so. I think that guy takes a dump like everybody else, and so I don't think I'm going to do that. And so like you should question that. But I think we're in a weird spot societally where we have, I don't know when this changes, or maybe this is too Leave It to Beaverish, where it felt like we had a place where like our principles were more important and we were willing to deal with the consequences, where we said, hey, look, my boss says I got to do this to get ahead. And I said, no, thanks. I'll work somewhere else. You're a sleazebag. And like I get it.
Yep.
The things and the things in society are difficult because like, well, I don't have a job. I can't take care of my family. When we stand on principle and the principles that other people agree with, I bet we can find ways to care for situations where people are standing up for what's right. And I get it. Just leave me alone. Don't send me a bunch of stuff. I get there's places where maybe those folks feel like they don't have a voice or a way to say it or ways to support. I get it. But my broad point is that like, what good is the principle if we're not willing to hold to it? And but also it's not fair to say everybody that is in a position of power or authority should be questioned. Like you should have some healthy skepticism of them because they're guiding you and the things that you're supposed to be doing. However, it's not fair to presume that just because someone has a level of authority that they will misuse that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Like think of how many people look up to, coaches or mentors or leaders of dance troupes or like people who were better parent type figures than their own parents. They had power, they had positions of authority, and they used it for awesomeness. And that encouraged people and helped them be better humans, pastors and elders and big brothers and big sisters. Like there's all kinds of structures where there's like there's a submission in there somewhere that says I'm willing to defer to this person whom I trust to guide my life. And so you lose potential if we say, well, no one can have that, and then act within their own personality in that, lest they mislead or force someone. I think we just got to be super careful. So I'm actually good with the ruling. Nathaniel?
I love the ruling.
You were aware of this one as well. You studied it closely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was actually unaware of it until you started talking about it this evening.
Meholy cats. So I don't know, Dan, have you seen any reactions on that one?
Not that I can think of. I mean, I probably have. It wasn't as out there as like the Roe versus Wade or pro or against. Yep. There was not a lot of arguing on it that I saw.
Yep.
Other than I think I saw somebody say, "Hey, a lot of wins for Jesus this week" or something, and I'm like, okay. I mean,
that's where I'm cautious. Like on this, I think that case is a thing of a type. I think it could have been about the nachos, and it's the same question to me. That one's not a win for Jesus. This is how do we safeguard things within our society, and how do we know when we're overstepping, like Minority Report style, and trying to prefigure whether someone's going to be offensive or not, or misuse their power? I think. So
I've seen it framed as a religious liberties win, and
I think that overstretches it.
Yeah,
I think it overstretches it.
Yeah,
it's nacho time. The guy, I mean, it happened to be about that, but it's not like it wasn't that the Supreme Court goes, "Hey, man, we're pro prayer." That wasn't what they were doing. They're saying he's a private citizen, and his influence was not mandatory at the time. People chose whether they wanted to join or not, and frankly, he's free to pray, just like he's free to sing the hits of Marvin Gaye on the 50-yard line if he wants to.
Right.
Like it's the same thing. It happened to be prayer, which is a loaded religious thing. I get that, but like I don't. I think it overstretches what they ruled to act like it's a religious liberty issue. It's a constitutional question that just happened to be a prayer thing for this man.
Yeah. I mean, I would think if it was a Muslim, and he ran out there and put a prayer carpet down and started going through the prayer time, they probably would have responded the same way, like, hey, don't do that right here.
Yeah.
Don't do it on the 50-yard line. I mean, go somewhere else.
Which is interesting, right? Because, like, if I'm okay with this guy doing Christian prayers at the 50-yard line, as an American, am I just as good with the Muslim putting out the prayer rug?
Right. I'm assuming in a Supreme Court setting that's opening up to anything.
Yes.
If you're a Satan worshiper, you get to go slay a goat and have a sacrifice. And
this is what's difficult. This goes now. Now you're facing the problems of a common morality that doesn't roll up to a trustworthy God. It's just a guy like, I want to pray to Jesus. This guy wants to, eat my cat for the glory of Beelzebul. Like it's very difficult to come with a reasonable moral plane. But see, as an American, I would say if it's a win for religious liberty if you also count the Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where I think you have to be fair. The precedent set here says there isn't anything about a religious observance post-football game that would cause someone to say, hey, you can't do that. You can't. And so, like, Christians, don't be too narrow. No one converted to the Lord Jesus today because that court case was won. In fact, what you did, if anything else, is you set a precedent that makes it easier for alternative viewpoints to behave in similar ways. And from an American perspective, they should be free to do so. From a Christian perspective, I don't like that because it could influence people negatively. But, like,
yeah,
I think you should be careful. Be careful where your victories are at.
What if I go to the nudist church and I'm going to go pray? And
I didn't see that example coming. Nathaniel, were you thinking, like,
honestly,
20 to 1 on nudist church?
I didn't know a nudist church was a thing.
You guys aren't hip.
Is that a thing, Dan?
Oh, absolutely.
What?
Man, it's been around a long time. I remember when I was in college, someone put a flyer on my window once, and they were inviting me to the nudist church.
Were there nude people on the flyer?
I didn't. No, I mean, it was like 80s, poorly type.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean,
the options for flyer making were lower in the 80s.
Exactly. I had to go to professionals to have little flyers made. That was before the personal computer.
Right.
So it was pretty crude, and it was just a bunch of writing, like, hey, come to the nude church because, in Genesis, they were nude and felt no shame. Therefore, that's how we are. And it was a real legit thing.
Oh, man, you were born of your father, Adam. You do have shame. Put a loincloth on, friend. Okay. Wow. That's like a thing now? Like, people are still doing this type of thing?
I haven't looked into that in recent decades. Just at the time, I've used it as an example for different things in the class I teach sometimes.
Right.
About interpreting Scripture. Like, let's look at some basic hermeneutics. Like, they're probably incorrect.
Right.
In interpreting that particular Scripture.
Yeah.
That's why it comes to mind once in a while.
Yeah. Okay. Let's give some advice so that we can call it a day here. Here we go. Dear Live from the Path, I love my husband, but I'm getting tired of being a second-class citizen in my home.
Uh-oh.
It started when we bought a van from a friend of mine. We talked about different things we could do with it, fix it up a little and sell it, or use it for vacation. But somehow along the line, it was suggested that we let my ex, Paul, buy it from us because he's homeless and chooses to let everyone else take care of him. The van is now fixed. Paul lost his job and is now living in the van in my driveway. The problem is he doesn't stay in the van. He crashes on my couch, uses my electricity, water, etc., and now eats my food. I told my husband this is not healthy for my mental well-being. My husband and I, this is a weird situation.
Yeah.
My husband and I own our own business, and Paul has now become involved in that too. My husband says he can use the help, and it gives Paul money to move. The only problem with that is my ex doesn't use the money for bills. He blows it on junk he doesn't need. I'm tired of raising a 41-year-old grown man. Help.
Which man is she referring to? Her husband or her ex-husband?
Yeah, right.
They're both children. Wow. That is bizarre.
Okay, I'm just gonna restate it for the facts for the jury here. She was married, divorces Paul, marries another man. They have a business from their house. They run their own business together. They discuss buying a van. They buy a van, and I think in discord with her, they fix up the van. But then the now husband suggests that the ex-husband can buy it.
Which tells you he's in the picture anyway, before the van.
That's right. He's around.
Yeah.
He has to be, okay. So he's around, and he suggests that the ex-husband could buy it. And the wife, ex-wife, the wife has a problem with this in general, it sounds like. Even just selling it to him, she feels like the husband has overstepped his bounds. I mean, I don't know. We'll come back to it. And so, and then they try to sell it to him. It doesn't sound like he can make the payments. And he lives in the van now. And he lives in their driveway.
And in their house.
And he goes in the house. He wanders in there. And now he works with the now husband as like an associate. And the now husband says, yeah, that's going to give him some money so he can move out of this van or the driveway. Except for, she didn't say he buys like drugs or booze with it. She just says he buys junk.
Yeah.
He buys crapola. And she says, but I'm a second-class citizen in my home. I don't. Okay, so I don't know, Nathaniel, help me sort this out.
Okay, here's what I think's happening.
Okay,
husband and ex-husband were pals.
Have been pals.
Yeah, have been pals.
Okay,
and that's how wife found new husband.
Oh, okay.
She was stealing from the cookie jar.
Okay, I gotcha.
So now, ex-husband and new husband, they're still pals. They're still
remarkably.
pally-wally.
Yeah, because I don't think that'd work with me.
Yeah, this Paul's a real saint.
Yeah.
Okay.
He, maybe it's his volition to let her go.
I see how this is playing out. Go ahead.
But, he still wants a pal. He doesn't want to spend a lot of money. She took everything in the divorce.
Right. New husband probably feels a little guilty.
Yeah.
For having stolen her.
And so he says, listen, Paul, live in the van.
Yeah.
We'll give you some coin. I don't care if you buy a drum set and put it in the van. What do I care, Paul? It's just old Martha over here. She doesn't care for it, but we'll just move on. Well, yeah, sure. You can choose what type of candy bar we sell this month and let it be the special.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what's going on here. And I think Martha has a reason to be upset.
I'm troubled with the fact that you said drums qualify as junk.
I mean, like if
everything else I'm liking.
In a van though.
Well, I mean, they're never junk.
I'm sure, but like he's got better things to spend his money on, like finding a real place.
I don't know, man. If you were living large and got to stay rent free in this van, wouldn't you feel like it's time to buy a drum set?
He could move the drums into the living room.
Time to beat the skins.
She makes poor choices all around.
Oh man,
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah.
I think Nathaniel's onto something. I think the guilt explains the new husband's behavior best. Otherwise, this is ridiculous. Like, why? Now, I don't care whether he was going to sell the van to the ex-husband. Like, what does that matter to me? I don't care who drives the van around. The problem was the moving in, living in the van, working with, and blowing money. It seems to be more the problem. But, like, the guilt would explain that, is that he feels guilty for putting the moves on this guy's wife. And so he's more tolerant of it. And the ex-wife hates this. Or the wife hates this because she felt justified in leaving the guy, and now he's around, and now he seems to be sucking in new husband, and so she comes off the worst. But if it went down like Nathaniel said, I don't know, you kind of had this coming.
I don't know. The whole thing's bizarre. If my wife, for whatever reason, left me and was with a friend of mine who were buddies since high school, and all that stuff, I would find a way to find a new friend, and I would just leave that situation. I had no desire to know what they're doing out there. It's like, just no.
Can I live in your driveway in a van? Like, no way.
Can I pop into your place?
Can I lay on the couch while you guys are in the bed that used to be shared by me?
Yeah.
I mean, no. I'm just not.
Okay, this situation is messed up. What was her? Let's go back to here. She just said help. Okay, now, here's what I'm going to tell you. I think she has this I'm a second-class citizen in my own house. I think frames this incorrectly. There's something else. I think what we've discussed, if it's even remotely close, there's other things going on here. This isn't just like, hey, my husband treats me less than. I have weird relationships with my ex-husband.
Yeah, she's treating herself less than.
Yeah, or treated the original husband less than, and is now reaping what she sowed in this odd situation. Because I think the new husband's totally feeling guilty about this. So,
Yeah. I think a second-class citizen kind of sums it up. Maybe not perfectly, but like if Doug and Paul are besties for life, and she's the third wheel now, but maybe by her own volition or not, or consequences of her actions or not.
okay, that's true.
Then yeah, she's a second-class citizen in the home when Doug and Paul make all the good decisions, like who gets the van.
So what's not clear though, she says, I told my husband this is not healthy for my mental well-being. I would ask, I suppose, like, tell me what you said to him. Did you say, my ex-husband cannot stay here? Did you try that? Were we super clear? This man cannot stay in a van in our driveway. I don't care that you feel guilty. Yeah. Okay. Here, so legit advice. Here's what I would say. I would say the very firm thing. I would start with your current husband, and then if it doesn't make movement like you want, I would go to the ex-husband and say, look, you need to move out directly. You don't live here anymore, and I'd be willing to, like, if it push come to shove, I mean, you can call the law on him. He is not allowed to stay at your place. I don't like calling the law on people, but like, if you asked him to leave and he refused to leave.
Yeah. I actually thought that myself. I thought, oh, that's what secular always says. I don't want to go there, but
like, I mean, there's a difference between you being a selfish turd, which is what most of the time people are trying to do, and they're trying just to further problems, versus like, I don't want this man living in a van in my front yard. And if he refuses to go anywhere, then like, I mean, he's trespassing. And that's now whether this blows up your current marriage is, I think, a second problem. It might be a good time for counseling without Paul. Paul doesn't get to go. You do with new man. You and new man do the counseling, and you just need someone to help facilitate some conversations that you guys seem incapable of having. Because you know what would be fascinating? I'd be willing to sign a 2-book deal with new husband. He's a fascinating character to me. I'm interested in all the ins and outs of how he thinks about life. And so I think it might be time to call in a trusted friend or a counselor. All right, Secular says, you are not a second-class citizen. Now, that's not true. You're just trying to encourage her. To Nathaniel's point, you may very well be.
Yeah.
She said, this arrangement seems crazy. Boy, it takes a lot to get Secular to use words like that. Because it is interfering with your marriage, tell your husband the situation is affecting your mental health and insist upon a deadline by which Paul will be out of there. Guests, like fish, start to stink after 3 days, and Paul has exceeded that by far. He has a van, so whether or not he is saved enough for a place of his own, he won't be without shelter. Your mental health is more important than your husband having an extra hand in the business. Yeah, I think that's true. Okay. What do you think, Nathaniel? We agree?
Yeah, Paul needs to get out of there.
Okay. All right, here we go. Dear, live from the path. I have several creative friends who have either written a book or made a music CD. Oh, what the hell was this person, 85 years old?
They got one of them music CDs.
I get asked to read or I know where this is going. I get asked to read or listen to these creations and submit an online review. The book was written about a very rough divorce, and my friend described her ex using some gossipy and awful information that I knew was not true. She placed all the blame on her ex when it was she who committed adultery, a fact she conveniently left out the book. The music CD was not to my liking either. My friend cannot sing. How do I handle these review requests? So far, I have simply not submitted a review because I'm not going to lie or give a bad one. But what do I say when they ask? You think there's any chance that it was this book and or CD was put out by that woman
with the van?
Yeah,
that's how it kind of crossed my mind.
It seems like the same situation.
Well, here's the deal. I don't think it's going to sell a whole lot, so I don't think anyone's going to read your review either. So
yeah,
I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't lie. I mean, in your review.
Yeah, I mean, just say. I'm trying to think if I've ever had the situation where someone presented me with art in like a serious thing, and I had to go, I don't love that.
Yeah.
I mean, music's easier for me. I might say, actually, both of those are. I think I would handle. If someone gave me a CD that I really did not enjoy, I would try to say one positive thing, I might try to say, as a matter of fact, this has happened to me. I've had a friend give me a CD, and I listened to it, and I said, there was one of the songs I'm like, if I had to pick a favorite, it would be this one. I don't know that I'd listen to it 15 times, but if I had to pick a favorite, it would be that one. And then I'd say, otherwise, it's not necessarily the type of music I listen to very often, but that one would definitely have been my favorite. That's probably all I would say.
Yeah, and that's fair. That's fair.
Yep.
You're helping them out, and you're also not being dishonest.
Yeah. And then for the book, I would say, look, I don't feel comfortable. If I thought a friend of mine, like non-quotes friend, had written a book that they didn't represent it correctly, I would say, look, I don't feel comfortable providing a review here, because this is not how I recollect it happening. And so rather than contradict you in an online review, I'm just going to pass.
Just ask if you can write the preface.
Yeah, can I write the preface? The following pages are filled with lies and trash.
Let me tell you about the affair that happened before all of this took place.
It wasn't always Paul. Yeah. I think you be honest, be kind, but be honest, and leave it at that. Nathaniel, has anybody ever handed you something where you listen to it and you're like, or read it?
I knew a guy. I worked with him at 3M, and he was a temp worker, and he chose to be a temp because they offered him a full-time position, but he was a drummer in a punk metal band.
Yeah.
Huh.
And I was
out of a van.
I'd like to get a listen on that because I'm a metal fan.
Yeah.
And so he said, "Oh, sweet, bro." He got all jacked up, and he came in and he gave me a couple of the CDs.
Yeah.
And they were just terrible.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean they were awful. But there was one song that kind of had a catchy chorus.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Yeah, that song had a catchy chorus. It was pretty rad."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, man." we went on on our way. Usually people don't ask me to read books, or review them. So I haven't had that experience. But yeah, I wouldn't say that you have to lie to them and say or make a fake post online that it was the best book in the world. And if they ask you why you didn't, just tell them the truth.
Yeah, I think it's all right. Dan, have you been in that position?
No. I've asked someone to do it before. I was kind of thinking about that. Like it was in the late 90s. I wrote a couple books that were like from columns, which I was looking at some of the stuff today from it because my daughter wanted to know a story, and I was like, "Hey, I wrote about that once."
Yeah,
and I would say it's about a third grade quality penmanship writing, not the penmanship, but the writing quality and skill. But I put this book together, and it was self-published and everything, and I sent a copy or samples to Bob Russell, who was like, especially at that time, like one of the premier preachers in the country.
Oh yeah.
And I said, "Hey, can you write a little endorsement thing?" And I thought he'd be ridiculous to do this.
Yeah.
But he did.
Well, nice.
And like a few weeks later, he sends back a little thing, and it's just on the back cover of my book. And I think, gosh, I bet now he's embarrassed about that. But he did it.
What a cool thing for Bob Russell to do.
Yeah, I've always been just so crazy appreciative of that.
Yeah.
Because he didn't know me. And it wasn't, like I say, it was just some thing I threw together every week for a column. I mean, it was just like, crap, I got 15 minutes, quick, throw something together.
Right.
And as I was reading one of the little stories, I thought it just sounded a lot like I had 15 minutes and I threw it together real quick. And he still had nice little things to say.
Well,
you think Bob actually read it?
Yeah, because I didn't give him a big sample.
Okay.
Or somebody did. Maybe he just said, "Here, write a review." That's possible. But still, he didn't have to put his name on it.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's his reputation.
Yeah.
He's a big author, too, now.
Yeah, that's true.
He did not ask me to review his book, though.
I was going to say, it's coming. It's coming, Dan. He's going to send you the snippet. Okay, so that was our advice. Let's see. Secular says, tell your author friend, while she may be a talented writer, you are not comfortable endorsing her book because it's being used as a weapon to make her ex-husband look bad. Point out that if her book succeeds, he could retaliate by suing her for libel, and you want no part of it. As to your musician friend, all you need to say about the CD is that it is clear the singer has music in their soul. Oh, yeah, right. In the future, when you're asked to write a review, decline by stating that because you are a friend, you cannot give an unbiased review. Period. That's weird. That seemed real forceful at the
Have you
end.
ever reviewed anything? Like online?
Yeah.
An Amazon purchase.
You have reviewed an Amazon purchase?
Yeah, I did. I think I've done like one or two. I'm not very good at them.
I've done a handful. I won't give negative ones. I give like restaurants and stuff. I think maybe if it's a bad day, I just give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to make them lose business.
Right.
But I'll do the positive ones like, hey, great experience. Really love the spaghetti.
I've never given feedback, I don't think, on any purchase I've ever made.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know. I don't have an advocation whether you should start or not. I feel like there's been times where I just felt if it was a particularly good interaction, like I felt like I should say something because of all the people who don't, like all the Nathaniels in the world. Yeah.
If I have a bad situation, I'll write like personally. I'll send a message to the whatever, either corporate or local, whatever, just so they know, because I figure they need to know. I was in a local grocery store once where they serve restaurants food, and went into the restroom, and I saw a cook come out of the stall and not wash his hands and go back to the kitchen, of which I was about to head to order food.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. And so I got on their little website and emailed the corporate, and they were like, bam, they were within 5 minutes they responded back. And I said, and even my email was like, hey, not complaining, just, you might want to review your safety procedures with your people in the kitchen. I noticed one of the guys not washing his hands after, dropping a deuce.
Right.
And, it just kind of grossed me out. I'm sure it grossed other people out. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't make a big public, stink out of it. He made the stink earlier. Sorry. It's
Okay, that's going to tap us out. Hey, thanks for listening to Live from the Path. Yeah, we really appreciate you hanging out with us. And if you got any feedback for the show, hit us up on the Live from the Path with Bob Eisler complaint line, 515-517-0085. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, be faithful in the means. God will handle the ends. You've been listening to Live from the Path.